I waited 10 years to fulfill this vision of giving every Singaporean a very personal view of what their future could be like.
For the first time, technology cannot be in the forefront, and the story is the focus.
Today's episode dives into how AI personalized the visitor experience and dives into engagement at exhibitions. Now, behind every exhibition is a bold vision, and the people bold enough to bring this to life. I'm really excited to be joined by two of them here today, Tham and Richard Lee from the National Library Board, to share about the SG60 Heart&Soul Experience. Very good morning, Jean and Richard. Thank you for joining us here today. This is the year that Singapore celebrates our 60th birthday. And we know that Heart and Soul is truly a SG60 flagship event. So maybe we begin with you first, Jean, as the Chief Librarian. What was your vision of Heart and Soul?
The vision actually started 10 years ago when I was doing another national project for the then PM Lee Hsien Loong. But 10 years ago, Mark, the technologies just cannot make it, because the idea of having to develop personal features almost like every 10 minutes for every group of visitors was the biggest challenge. But I would say that the technology has finally caught up, and then Accenture was able to help us to develop something that was truly unique for every individual.
How do you see Heart and Soul enabling our people who visit the exhibition to better connect with the history of Singapore and the culture, and more importantly, emotionally connect with one another as Singaporeans and with the nation, as well as their imagined future?
So in a very large extent, I think the emotion that we wanted to communicate for every visitor walking out is happy hope. So the idea that I'm not just hopeful, but I'm happy because I know how to get to that future that I desire.
Richard, being the CIO of NLB, can you talk a bit about the journey where you're pushing the boundaries, all right, of using an evolving tech like generative AI?
Throughout the whole journey, you can say that it's also a learning experience for me to see how can use tech to create something not for the company, for the enterprise, but for people on the street. And I learned through the process to say that, for the first time, technology cannot be in the forefront. It has to be at the background. And the story is the focus. And of course, throughout the whole journey, it is a very challenging experience because technology evolves very fast. And this time around, we use Gen AI quite a fair bit. And as you know, Gen AI 2 years ago and Gen AI right now, even as we are speaking, is evolving very, very fast.
It is indeed. What are some of your, I would say, key success factors? You know, surely there must be some key lessons learned, right?
Well, I guess one thing that I would advise people is you have to try. Because Gen AI is powerful, right? But yet Gen AI also has so-called a bad reputation. So the data that you need to make the Gen AI work, you need to be very careful. You just collect what's necessary for it to work, for it to create a personal experience. Of course, the other thing you need to do is, take the bold step, experiment it, and sometimes maybe technology may not be the only solution.
Yes. It's always simple to try, but scaling is always difficult. But nonetheless, you always just try, right? And then you adjust along the way. What's one key advice that you will give to leaders?
So like Richard said, don't be afraid to try, but at the end of the day, let it be human-led. So even the use of Gen AI was human-led. It was a quote from Arthur C. Clarke that said that technology at its highest level is invisible. In fact, start with the story that you have in mind, and start with the emotion that you like your visitor to come out of it from. So I think for citizen engagement, you almost have to plan it down to the minute. So we had a team of librarians and even design students together with folks from Accenture to figure out what are all the assets you want to build first, all the content that will resonate with the citizens. Then you let technology enable you to do that. I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned.
Thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.